Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights with Experts. Today, we're honored to have with us Julian. How are you today, Julian?
Very good, thank you.
The first question for you would be, how did you get involved with Choson Exchange, and what does Choson Exchange do?
Sure. Where should I start? So originally I'm Swiss, now living in Singapore, um, and Chosen Exchange is something I do on the side, so it's not my full-time job, and I think we're going to discuss that later. So Chosen Exchange is a NGO, non-profit, founded in Singapore by Rossy, who's a Singaporean. So we are educating, teaching business in North Korea to entrepreneurs in North Korea. When I say that, people always look at me, what is the entrepreneurs in North Korea? By the way, that's a picture I took in Pyongyang, which I think is a quite nice picture. I thought was a good background. So yeah, Chosen Exchange aims to kind of bridge our knowledge from, I would say, our world, what we know, to the people in North Korea, because as you know, the system there is much different, and we are not political. We're not here to take party position on one system or the other. We just know that the access they have to the global knowledge is limited. So we aim to kind of facilitate exchanges, communication between North Koreans and the rest of the world. And how we do it concretely, we organize trainings either in North Korea. So we typically gather a group of business people, entrepreneurs. Sometimes we got C-level from big consulting firms, investment banking, etc., or just entrepreneurs from around the world, and we bring them to Pyongyang or to other cities in North Korea for 7 days, where we organize a conference. And each speaker spend times with one team, coaching them, mentoring them, kind of making them reflect on business models, stuff like that. That's one thing we do. On the other hand, we invite North Korean to international events. So we bring them out of North Korea, typically in Singapore, in Vietnam, in Switzerland, in China. And we aim to make them mingle in an international environment and meet people from around the world. So that's, I would say, concretely what we do. We aim to drive positive change in North Korea on the micro level. So how can North Korean improve life of their fellow citizens? Myself, I've been traveling a lot, and North Korea, when you're a traveler, is always very, I was very curious about this country, and I thought I would like to visit one day. The basically only way to go there is tourism, which is organized by the country. You nowadays have access to much broader types of activities and visits that you could do many years ago. But it's still within a framework that you cannot really don't meet as many locals as what we do. So when I got to meet Jeffrey, the founder of Choson Exchange, in Switzerland, I guess around 3 years ago, I was very keen on joining him on one of his trips, and it happened in November 2018, where I just gave a lecture about design thinking. I went back in March 2019, and in October 2019, I was co-organizing the trip. So we had a group of 15 people. So this was quite interesting. So on the one hand, I help on programs happening in the country, which obviously cannot happen at the moment. And I also coordinate events internationally, especially linked to the Sangalen Symposium, which is a big business event or conference, I would say, happening in Switzerland every year. I guess you're on mute, Jonathan.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned earlier was that you don't actually work full-time with Choson Exchange. So my next question to you then would be, how do you balance a full-time job and then the work you do with Choson Exchange and other outside work? So any tips, I guess, for students who are in the position about trying to figure out work-life balance, or also like trying to figure out how to balance time to work on different subjects?
Yeah, great question. I like to believe I'm an entrepreneur, not because I have founded my own company, but because of my mindset. I think we have 7 days a week, and we're not limited to a 9 to 5 job. So I've when I finished my studies around 2 years ago, I've always, or even before, I always went for small companies, small structure, because I really don't want to have the struggle of doing a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 10 p.m. if you work for in consulting, where you don't have the flexibility to play around your schedule. I had the chance of working for a very amazing Swiss company. We're into public transport ticketing, so it's very different. But I'm the only employee based in Singapore, which gives me huge flexibility. Basically, at the moment, it's 11 a.m. here in Singapore. My colleagues are sleeping, which is why it's my pleasure to talk to you. And sometimes I will work later in the evening for them. So, with this flexibility I get from work, it's easy for me to play with my schedule, to organize and work for Choson Exchange. We have Saturday, Sunday, we have 7 days a week. And I really think that this mission, this work I'm doing with Choson Exchange is something I'm passionate about. So it doesn't feel like additional workload. It feels like something I really like doing, and I'm having fun doing. So it's a great side activity to keeps me. I'm someone that likes to have different things at the same time. It keeps me motivated and keeps me going. So I would say that that's kind of how I handle my work between my office job and things I do on the side.
Going into the work that Choson does, I guess there is a common misconception about having limited impact and having such high barriers, right? When you think of it from an outside perspective, to go into North Korea and to start working on projects like this, it must have been daunting at the start. So how do you break down these barriers into like actionable size pieces?
Can you repeat the question or reframe? I'm not sure I got it right.
Yeah, so when you look, like, for example, using the idea of Choson Exchange, right? Working with North Koreans and going to North Korea, it's a very big project. So as youths, when we start projects, right, they seem daunting and they seem hard and when we start because it's such a big level thing. So how do you convince yourself that it's doable? How do you break such big projects down into smaller pieces and that you can work on?
Well, I cheated on that because I joined an organization which was very well built already. We should ask the question to Jeffrey, because when he first went to North Korea as a tourist and he said, I do want to drive positive change there, it was, I think, in 2008. He struggled for 2 years to find an access into this country, which is so closed, and was even more back then. But like talking about my experience, obviously this year we had big plans. We were supposed to go to Pyongyang 3 times. We were supposed to bring 6 or even more North Korean to Switzerland, and then COVID happened. And of course that was challenging because North Korea was the first to close the border and probably the last to open, for obvious reasons. So there is nothing we can do at the moment in terms of physical exchange. They're not online. They are connected to the outside world via mostly phone, sometimes emails as well, but makes things quite challenging. So we really, when things starting to get difficult, we really brainstorm on how we can still drive change and carry on our programs. And now we are very keen to work on a few projects. On the one hand, we have carried out research on one region, which is Gangwon province, which is in the south of the north, southeast, and this is a region from the same name in South Korea. So by comparing both, and Gangwon province might be a big hub for tourism in North Korea in the future. So we made some back office research. We have contacts. We contact people, make phone calls, email. We also carried out programs online for North Korean that live overseas, so have access to the internet. So we try to pivot, and of course this was new, so quite challenging. But North Korea is all about knowing the right people, and we have great partners there, which have the power of doing things. And thanks to them, we have been able to somehow pivot into more digital programs, which is what we are doing at the moment.
Talking about having to pivot, what do you think was some of the hardest parts of your journey so far, either personally or with Choson Exchange?
Well, when I was doing my master studies back in St. Gallen in Switzerland, I was so keen on doing so many things that I just realized that I had a 70% job, then a full-time class, which was taking me 2 days a week, so another 40. I mean, if you sum up all this, I had like a 160% activity, and I was like, oh, that's a bit too much. It was very challenging for me to really handle all these tasks and do them well and still see my friends and have fun. And what kept me going is that it was only for a few months, 1 year of master. So in June the following year, this was over. So I was very busy back then, but I challenged myself to carry on this because I knew this would stop at some point. So that was a very challenging time of my life. And then I managed to find balance into what I do now. I have more time to also have fun, see my friends, and travel in normal times and do things. Linked to North Korea, well, when you have the responsibility for a group of 15 to 20 people and you have to bring them to Pyongyang, and some of them are very senior business people, and they take our passports on the first day of the week and they are kept by the hotel, so you just lose power, but I was with my colleagues still responsible for the group. I think it's a big question of trust. We do trust our partners because we have built this relationship over time. And this, I guess, is the key why I felt quite confident, even though it was stressful and challenging. And I have to say, when we all landed safely in Beijing, even though nothing bad happened, it just feels like, whew. But yeah, again, it's all about having trust and relationship to the people we work with.
I guess the trips don't get any easier, even though you've done it multiple times. Still the same stress every trip.
No, the more I go, the less I know about this country. And now I get more responsibilities on the trip. So yeah, it gets more difficult, I would say.
We end off our interviews with a question that we ask everyone, and that is, if you could leave youth with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, interesting. And I guess we can talk about social impact, because when I was in college, I wanted to drive positive change, to have some social impact, and I'm a typical business student. My skills are not meant to help the world, to be honest. So I remember I had some friends going to Africa to help in hospitals, which is amazing. But if I was to do that, I could probably help, but it's not really what I'm good at. So I think the key for me was finding something where I shine, you can say, where I'm good at, use my skills to drive positive change. So in a sense, I wanted to have a social impact on this world, on any community, but without forcing it. So maybe that's my biggest piece of advice. Don't force anything in life. It's great to have big ambitions, motivation, but before everything, I think personal well-being matters a lot. And it's not a bad thing to not like if you don't give money to charity because you don't have money, that's not a problem. I think it's about finding a way to balance activities and use your skills for your personal, but also your personal life, but also for the well-being of the community. And I think that's what I try to build without forcing it.
Thank you so much, Julian, for taking the time out today to join us for this interview.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I hope it was helpful, and I'm happy to connect via email, LinkedIn, whatever, with any one of you listening to this podcast. And do have a look at what we do with Choson Exchange. It's quite interesting. It's different than what you would expect from an NGO or from North Korea. That's why I think it's very interesting, and great information on our website.
Thanks for listening in. This podcast has been brought to you by Desire, a platform designed to bridge the gap between the youth and professionals. You can read more about us at desair.org. And you can also check out the section titled Insights with Experts, where you can submit your questions that you might have for future experts and industries that you would like to learn more about. And you can also refer in any experts that you might know yourself.